Hey everyone, I was just trying to figure out what happened yesterday with the school shooting in Broward County. That's about 25 miles away from where I live. And I was actually walking through the mall that day, probably about 15-20 minutes before this all happened. And a thought came across my mind of a shooting. And then what do you know, 15 minutes later, this happened. I did come across some new information about Cruz, the alleged school shooter. Cruz lost his parents when he was very young. And when the state takes control of children, those kids are usually heavily medicated and vaccinated. Now, Cruz became autistic, and I blame the state for that because they're the ones who made the medical decisions on Cruz when he was very little. I believe Cruz could have easily been manipulated with mind control. He was already on mind-altering medication. Cruz had recently lost his adoptive mother and was essentially broke with no place to go. What I found strange also is Cruz was a member of the junior ROTC, which trains kids to go into the armed forces. So likely Cruz had some weapons training. I was in JROTC and I learned how to fire an M16, so it's likely Cruz had weapons training. Cruz was actually kicked out of the school and showed up a year later, and he was caught with a JROTC shirt on. It just seems so scripted. And I actually came across some information that there was actually a drill going on at that school the same day. There was another girl who was talking with Cruz maybe like a minute after she heard some bullets. And she was talking with Cruz and he was just in the crowd. So she's like, it's not possible that Cruz could have been the only shooter. Was Cruz a sleep cell activated by the deep state? Should autistic people be allowed to have guns? Autism is said to affect 1 in 3 boys by 2030. This is a serious national health crisis. I have a post from someone that knew Nikolas Cruz, the shooter, was actually a neighbor, and he gave some details about Cruz's life. Prayers go out to all the families affected by the shooting in Parkland. The shooter, Nikolas Cruz, was my next-door neighbor for several years. Nicholas lost his mother several months ago and his father when he was very young. I try to give Nicholas a job and help him. I feel disgusted at what he's done and wish I had done a lot more to help him. He suffered from autism and was put into a special school for disabled kids. He was bullied his entire life and complained that he was constantly treated badly at school. This is no excuse for what he has done, but kids must realize that sometimes bullying can lead to horrible consequences, and that they can turn a sweet person to do the unthinkable. Nicholas was living with my ex-fiancé Roxanne, as she was given guardianship by his mother. Linda left all the money to Roxanne, as well to take care of him. Roxanne, instead of taking care of him, kicked him out of the house several months ago and provided him with no financial assistance or support of any kind. I even had to bring him to the mother's funeral as he had no money or a ride to get there. I was trying to console the young man and get him legal help so he could recover the money his mother left for him. So long story short, he was bullied and mistreated by strangers, and the people who were supposed to love him and take care of him took advantage of him, and this was the tragic outcome. I don't even know how to put into words how awful I feel about the situation and how angry I am at Roxanne for taking advantage of this young man. I'm not faulting for her for the shooting, but she was his guardian, and so was the state, and she abandoned him and left him penniless.
I actually was in the bathroom at the moment, and I came back to my classroom and I knocked on the door, and the fire alarm went off, and principal came on the speaker and just said everyone needs to evacuate right now. So that's what we did. As I was going down the stairs, I heard a couple shots fired. Everyone was freaking out, saying that it was a gun. And as we were walking the whole class together, I actually was speaking to the suspect, Nikolas Cruz. And as I was speaking to him, he seemed very, I don't know what the word I want to say is, but he was trouble in middle school, so I kind of joked to him about it and said, I'm surprised you weren't the one who did it. And he just gave me a huh? So that's really what happened.
You were walking down the hall. He had already fired at that time.
Yes, sir, with him.
Weren't you scared?
In the moment I wasn't, because there was definitely another shooter involved, but...
Oh, you think he was not the only one?
No, definitely not.
Why do you say that?
Because when shots were fired, I saw him after the fact. So, and the shots were coming from the other part of the building. So there definitely had to be 2 shooters involved, I believe.
That's the first I've heard of that. Did you see any other students who were wounded?
No, sir.